I'm happy to announce that version 6.4 is officially available today. This update is a little later than I usually push updates out for a spring update. However, this update's also one of the larger updates I've pushed out. There's dramatic improvements on being able to time backyard ultra style races, a lot of improvements to the timing screen and some of the backup capabilities, and being able to replay a race. A lot of improvements to the race roster, race entry, run sign up integration, and some other just big things that when you're dealing with multiple companies or other online registration providers and stuff like that, it just takes a while to go back and forth. But let's dive into each one of these new features, and I think you'll enjoy what's coming. So the first new improvement that we're going to look at is something related to those that need to time backyard ultra style races. And so over the past year and a half or so, I've seen a growing number of users, mostly abroad, but I'm seeing more here in like Canada and the US, that are timing a backyard style ultra race. And so typically, now everyone's got a different definition of what that is. And there's going to be some backyard ultras that still are going to be difficult to time because if you have an event where, let's say, every couple of hours they change to a different loop and that loop is a totally different distance, well, as of right now, someone like my lap 13 may be a totally different distance than someone else's lap 13. So, depending how fast they're running, how slow they're running. But these improvements I've done today with this update should still make the vast majority of, should dramatically improve how easy it is to time those style races. With a typical setup. And let me give you a typical setup. So a few weeks ago, I timed a race called the Gearhead Outfitters Endurance Challenge. And so here is the course that we ran once around the lake, which is 2.5 miles. I've got some photos here you can look at. I did the whole results kiosk and the quick results TV, of course. But here, if you look at the photo, we had a chip start here. The course took off 2.5 miles. You had 30 minutes to run in and come back through the finish line. And then if you made it within 30 minutes, of course, that gives you a certain amount of rest time that you can take off or just rest until the next group starts every 30 minutes. And so these people came in at 22:02. That means they have roughly 8 minutes to rest. And if you look at the video here, here's a group coming in right before the 1 hour mark. So they're celebrating there. And if I fast forward a couple seconds, you'll see that the next group is starting. And so these people, if they don't come back within 30 minutes, then they have to sit out until the next 30-minute group starts. And so I think that seems to follow a lot of the backyard ultra style descriptions that I hear. So let's look at some of the improvements to the software to make this easier. So what I've done is if I go to the edit race page, so if you look across the top here, one thing that's new, that's not really exactly backyard specific, but I want to point it out since it is new, is that in the past, there was a global setting on the public display tab of the timing screen where you can say, hey, show all splits either by lap time or total time. Maybe it said interval or cumulative. Either one is kind of the same thing here, whereas lap time, of course, is that actual split, whereas total time is what is the total time since the start of the race or since their chip start that they did that split in. So that's new. You can set that on a per race basis. And so we're going to leave it to total time for now, and I'll show you why in a second. But one thing that's also new is if you have any distances for any of the splits that are 0, then now there's this new option that says hide 0 distance laps. And if I click on the question mark button here, you'll see that what this does, what it does do and what it doesn't do. So what it does do is, in my backyard ultra style race that I timed, where when they go back out across my read zone after they finish their rest time, I don't want it really sending them a text at that moment saying, hey, you just rested. And so I only wanted to text them whenever they're coming through on a split that has a distance greater than 0. What it also does is it will exclude, there's an option, well actually no, it's if you say hide 0 distance laps and it's a time-based race like this, then whenever you print results or use a results kiosk or the quick results TV, all the public-facing results that the software produces will hide that distance or that split with a 0 distance. And so if someone completed 20 reads, well, that 20 reads may consist of lap 1 is an actual lap, read 2 is their rest, read 3 is their lap 2, and read 4 is their rest again. So that really is going to be 10 laps they completed, and so that's what they'll see instead of saying 20 laps completed with half those being rest. I hope that makes sense. And if you've timed a race like this, I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. But one thing it doesn't do is that this as of right now with this update, error live results and run sign up, race entry, race roster, all those websites will still get all splits. And so that's a much bigger animal to tackle. And I'm not really sure. I think some people may want it to where it includes all, some people may not. So I'm not sure which direction I'm going to go on that yet. And it might, again, just be an option where if you say hide all, it hides everywhere. But as of right now with this update, it does not hide the splits that are on error live results or the 3 online registration providers that the software has interface with. But anyways, that is a new update. One thing too that's new is that in the past, if you wanted to set up a bunch of splits with half of them being 0, well, you had to do each one. And so now you can do either all splits, which was there before. It simply said apply to all. But I've added 2 new options where you say apply this to all even or all odd. So for example, earlier I was playing with this, and I don't remember what my gap times were. This is a dummy database I created just for this demo. But I don't remember what my gap times were before. But let's say you wanted to have a 4-second gap on every odd split. Then you could just change it to odd. And then maybe on every even split, you want to have 10-second. Then you can do that. So you can use the odd and even on the descriptions or on the distances and easily change all that. So I set up the rest. And when you set up a rest, by the way, and you say even or odd, it'll ask you if you want to include the distance of the other. So if I did even, it'll say, hey, would you like to include the distance on the odd when I'm doing the dynamic field of calculating miles or distance, or kilometers is a new option here too. So anyways, that is a new thing that hopefully helps make setting up a Backyard Ultra easier. A couple other things that are somewhat related to this. If I click on time race, I set up a few splits. In fact, some of these splits are after the actual gun time here, so ignore that. But so this was roughly an example of the race I timed. Again, this is a demo database, so I don't have all the results here on this computer. But so let's say the first person came across at 22:09, and then they took off on their rest lap. You know, when the 30-minute group started, well, then I picked them up again, and so that was their 30-minute starting time, and then they came back at 43 minutes, and then they took back out on another lap at an hour. And so when you do the quick results, now let's do 102, that is the bid member we're looking at, it'll actually show all their splits. And so what this does is if you're ever timing a race and you're concerned you missed someone at some point during the race, or if they come and tell you missed them, well then now instead of showing just their last split time, you can see all their splits here. And so that allows you to kind of eyeball it. And in fact, if I swap this over, let's minimize this, swap this to interval. I think I would leave it total time, by the way, because with total time, you could easily look at the results and find exactly those splits. Because on the middle screen here, you can have a long list, hundreds or thousands of results, and it may be hard to find them. But here you can skip straight to that result because of the time. But if I switch it to interval time and do 102, now it's going to see, okay, well, they were 22:09 for the first lap, and then they rested for 8 minutes and 10 seconds, and then 13:06 for the second lap, and so on. So, but anyway, so that's another improvement with this update. One other thing is whenever the system does send the SMS results, it will also include their last split time. I think in the past it just included their total time, and so that's another improvement with this update. Probably the most exciting feature with version 6.4, at least from my perspective, is the new recent tag reads. And so if I pull up, this is the very first race I used this feature at about a month ago when I was testing it out. It's Catholic High School Rocket 5K in Little Rock. And so I actually have a screenshot at the end of the race where I wanted to take a look at a couple things. Number one, I always like to look at the antenna stats to see, okay, which one's performing better. And of course, the MAD antennas always vastly outperform the MAD antenna just because of how wide the read zone is and stuff like that. So that 5, 7, and 8 were all panel antennas, and the 1 through 4 is the MAD antenna. But anyways, in the top right, there's this recent tag reads. And so the way this works is any UHF tag, whether it belongs to this system or if it's some tag built into clothing or if it's even a tag that is locked, that's comes from some other timing system provider. Doesn't matter. If it's a UHF tag and it comes across the read zone, it will appear in this list. And so more than that, though, and there's a lot of benefits we're seeing this, by the way, and we'll cover that in a second. But more than this, whenever it shows up in this list, it's also written out to a tag read file. So first, let's look at the actual tag read file that's created. Now, this file is created the moment you start pull up time race, and the moment you do any activity, even starting the race itself. And so starting the race, adjusting the time, if you reset the race or undo the finish or anything else, or finish the race or reset it, whatever, all that activity is stored in the file. So if you have timing crews that are going out and timing for you, then if they make some accusation of, oh, the system just lost all the times, which, God forbid they make that claim, but even if they do, you can ask them to send you the tag read file, or you can get their computer and look at it yourself, and that will show everything they did. And it will also have every tag read that occurred. What's nice is this software allows you to replay that file. And so let's say you had a situation where you realized your gap time was too high, and so therefore times were being missed. Or let's say you realize that and I've had this happen before, where a customer called me after the fact saying, hey, it turns out this was a 2-lap race instead of a 1-lap race like I had it set up. So when those people came across on lap 1, the system ignored them on lap 2 when they're actually finishing. They were new users, they didn't know what to do. So kind of a stinky situation there. But what's this new feature here, I can tell them, oh, just change your laps and then re-import the file, and it'll reprocess all those reads. And so, like I said, it'll actually replay the whole race, where let's say that they started the race at 8 a.m. and they adjusted the time by a few seconds. It'll start the race, it'll adjust the time. Now, the one thing it won't do is it won't reset the race back to 0 if they do that, because obviously if you're replaying the file, my assumption is that the last thing you want is to replay it and just clear the results away. But let's look at the actual file that's created. First, let's look at where it's created. So if we open up the settings screen, then if you have a backup path that is set here, then that's where your backup or your tag read file is going to reside. In fact, I've got mine pulled up here. And so this is my public documents folder. You'll have a folder that's created automatically called tag reads. And inside that folder will be a file that starts off with art tag reads underscore the current date that you're actually doing the activity on the timing screen underscore the city. Now, I put the race name after this because I was just simulating, like, what if I had 2 races I was timing on the same day and in the same city? Well, in that case, it's actually going to feed all the data to one file, because it's doing it on a per day, per city basis. And so what you could do is you can either copy that file out, cut it out or whatever, let the system create a new one, or you can just give this one a new name, and then it'll automatically create a new one with the same name as just the date and the city, and dump the second race's reads into there. But anyways, if we look at the actual data inside the file, so let's pull up this one here. So here, it looks like I was playing around. So this is, I started the race. Actually, this might be from the real race. So I started the race, and then I adjusted the time, and then the format of the data includes the UHF, the EPC of the tag. That's the first thing. Then it's the date timestamp that it was read. And then after that, it's a true false value representing, is this a chip start or a chip finish? And so if I go down here, these are all chip or split finish times. And so that is the structure of the file. So what's nice with this is this actually allows you don't have to have this activity at the top if you don't want to. If you wanted to have a pre-assigned starting list, where you maybe use Excel to create a structure that is like this, a comma separated file where you've got your EPC, and by the way, it doesn't have to have all the zeros. You can just have it to where, for example, I can create a file that's got bib number 123 as 1, 2, 3, and then if I wanted to have date timestamp, I'm just going to put this for now, date time, and then true. So I can follow this same structure and create a file and import it, and it'll preset everyone's starting time. So if you had a race, like I think cycling races do this sometimes, where you wanted to have a, every 15 seconds or 20 seconds or whatever, you have the next bib number starting, and you want to have pre-assigned start times. Well, instead of doing that one by one on the athlete tab, you can now create a file that you can just import into the software, and it'll preset everyone's start time. So that's another improvement that comes with this feature here. So as you do activity, you'll see that activity appears here, and then again, all the tag reads are there. And then if we go to the timing screen, now by the way, if you don't have this path set, then that tag read file is going to be located wherever your database is at. So it'll be in this path right here. But if you look at the tag read file, as the reads are coming in, again, you'll see the activity occurring here. And then you can just click, if you needed to investigate something, then you can click on open, and it'll open up that tag read file for you. And here, let's say you wanted to find, someone's claiming, oh, I was missed at that my third split was missed. And let's say it was bib number 361. Then you can type in 361 and see every time they were read. And so that way you can see, oh yeah, the software ignored you here for whatever reason. Um, and so now it looks like this was during the chip start, so it was feeding in a lot of data. And the way this works is it will only write out to the file whenever that EPC is being bumped off the, well, actually it writes it out in real time as it is included in the list, but that EPC, if it's in this list, then the software essentially ignores it, doesn't write out to the file and doesn't re-add it to this list. Because the assumption is if you have finishers coming in, if someone goes back out on the course and then runs back in with their wife or their friend or whatever, that's probably going to be more than 8 finishers apart or whatever. So what I try to do is make it to where it's not writing out every read that's occurring and also not pushing a new list view item into the list on every possible read, because as you know, when a tag comes across, it could be picking them up a few hundred times a second. And so to try to keep the traffic down and to keep this file to where it's not so massive that Windows can't even open it, I'm only writing out unique EPCs that are not already in the list. And I'm only putting new items in this list if they're not already in the list. So just as you test this feature, be aware of that you have to scan new tags in order for them to be written out to the file and also for them to appear in this list. So, and in reality, that's in a real race, that is perfectly fine. So anyways, just that's how that works. But you've got the ability to open the file while you're timing if you need to investigate something, look at something, or whatever. You've also got the ability to import a file. So let's say you found out that your gap time is too large, or that you set your race up, like I mentioned before, as a 1 lap race and turns out as 2. Well, even if you did do that, when those people come around for the second lap, those entries will still be occurring here, even though the software is ignoring them down here in the results. It's not going to put new results in because it says, oh, they've already finished, ignore them. But it's still writing out those reads to the file and including those reads here on the list view. And so if you realize that's happening, first thing you do, of course, go change your laps to 2, and then you can turn right around and import this file, which it takes you to the location the file is located at. You can select your file, hit OK, and it'll reprocess those reads, which should allow that second split back into the timing screen. Now, I will say the import feature, that's kind of a last resort thing. It does a really good job. I've tested it at the last few races I've timed, just testing after the fact, and it works fine. But it's may not be as accurate as real-time timing here, but it can definitely save you in a pinch. And the other thing is this reset option. So if you're testing this, maybe you turn the readers on before the race to kind of test things out, or maybe it's the day before the race and you're kind of playing around. If it's the day before, it's not going to hurt anything because that'll be a different file created the day before versus the day of, because again, it does it by date and by city. And so if you're testing the day before, you'll have a file created the day before and then a new one on race day. But if you wanted to get rid of that file and clear the reads, that's what the reset option is for. Another thing this kind of opens the door for is I've had some people in the past ask, hey, can your software import reads or take in reads from another system? So maybe they use some other system as a primary timing system, but they wanted to have those reads processed and the results and all that stuff done in mine. This kind of opens the door for that, as long as their system can provide a file that looks like this, where really all you need is the EPC of the tag, the date timestamp that it was read, and a true false value representing was that a chip start or a chip finish. And so if their system can spit out data that looks like this, then you should be able to import that data into the timing software and use my software for the actual results processing and posting results online and all that stuff. So that's another capability that's added in with this feature. So this last part of this video, I'm going to kind of quickly run through some of the little improvements that some people have requested that other people might appreciate. So a couple of small things. For example, if you right click on the bib number box here, you can do hide race panel. I've had some people say that after they start the race, they don't really, especially if you're timing like a 50K or whatever, maybe you want to have the entire screen dedicated to your results on the left. Now you've always been able to drag and drop this however you want to make it bigger or smaller, but some people say, hey, I want the results as big as possible, so I can maybe I can drag my columns around and they stay there, where I can see my word status and all that stuff. But you can right click on the bib number box and do show or hide. Now, if you hide it, you'll see the option where a link appears here that says show. And I did that because what if someone mistakenly, they don't know this feature exists and they mistakenly right click and clicked hide? Well, hopefully in the panic of the situation, if their clocks go away over here, they can see this show race panel and that'll make it show up too. So anyways, that's a new improvement. I've also redesigned the top of the screen so that hopefully it's a little easier to see what's going on. So basically on the top left and the main blue box here, this is all your race controls, right? So you're going to hit the space bar here, you're going to capture chip starts, you're going to turn your readers on, start listening, all that stuff. And then everything to the right of that is more of just data that you might want to look at, right? So here's your readers and their status. Here's your real-time antenna stats. You know which antennas are picking up the most tags, and then here's your RFID read activity. All that stuff going on the screen. So hopefully that redesigned screen is a little cleaner and easier to see. One thing too that someone requested is the ability to show or hide milliseconds and also define the number of digits to see. So there's this option here that says display milliseconds. So in fact, you'll see that I've turned it on just for this demo where I've got 1 millisecond. And so in fact, if I undo finish on this, you should see those milliseconds here. Now those milliseconds, that applies across all times that you see. And so if you needed to see a certain number of milliseconds on the screen for whatever reason, you have that option now. But if you want to turn that off to put it back the way it was, you can go to Advanced, turn that off, hit OK. And so now your time is back like it was. And then one final thing I did was I made it so that the chip start times are, if someone started after the gun started, it's now a plus sign. And if someone started before the gun start, it's a negative sign. And so I did that because to me it was a little confusing. I just want it to be very straightforward. If it's a negative time, that means that's an early starter. For example, let's say you're timing a marathon and the marathon starts at 7, but you have some older people or some slower people that might not make the cutoff time, and so therefore you allow them to start at 5:30 or 6. Well, they will now have a negative 1 hour or an hour and a half, whatever starting time or chip differential time. So hopefully I simplified that to where a positive symbol means that is people that are starting after the gun start, and a negative symbol represents times of people starting before the gun start. I guess the last thing I'll cover is I've made dramatic improvements on the efficiency of how the software processes chip start times. And so if you are having hundreds or thousands of people flooding through a starting line, in the past you would see the clock over here starting to struggle a little bit. Now with it's still processing and everything will go, we'll get through eventually. But especially if you have a slower, older computer, Windows could be processing so long they will actually get a pop-up saying, "Hey, the program's not responding. Would you like to kill it?" Now, hopefully you hit no because it will continue and process and clear up, and it'll be fine once people leave the starting line. Um, but that can obviously be unnerving when you see the program struggling, even though it's processing as fast as it can. But I did find some ways to dramatically improve how fast it processes the data, and so you should see a lot less lagging when you're capturing chip starts. Again, there's a lot of things in this update. I'm going to cover just one last one. You can check the users forum for a full list of updates. But the one thing I've had requests for is the ability to set, let's go to, for example, the tag check or quick results TV or one of these other features. You can now define the text that appears on the screen. And so that's in the settings screen, but also you can add your own background image. I don't know what images are on this computer, so well, in fact, I'll pick this one we were looking at earlier. So you can change if you want to have your own logo or background image. You can change that here. And so that's another new improvement that hopefully you guys can take advantage of to have a nice looking quick results TV or tag check or announcer screen, stuff like that, where that screen is used. I guess the final thing I'll say with this update is majority of the time was spent working on improving the run sign up and race roster and race entry integration. And so I think most of that time was on the race roster side, but quite a bit of time, since the majority of people use run sign up, was spent on improving run sign up. And so I think you'll find as you're syncing athletes, you get a lot less prompts on, for example, missing athlete types or mismatch of athlete types. You're going to get a lot more reliable data to and from both systems. And so I think you'll find that using those interfaces is quite a bit nicer with this update.